Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to the epic derby of the round 6 of the Tata Steel Masters in 2025. In this round we had the clash of really two great young players. The current leader of the event, Nodirbek Abdusattorov, is playing against the current world champion Gukesh D, and the situation before this round 6 was like this. Nodirbek and Pragnananda were in the lead with 4 points. Gukesh was on the third place with 3.5 points. Prague played today a draw, which meant with a win, Nodirbek could be the sole leader after 6 rounds. If, for instance, Gukesh wins now this game, he could be in the lead combined with Pragnananda. So I think it's a very, very important match. Let's see now what happened. It was a really, really crazy game between these two top grandmasters. So with white, Nodirbek opened with the move e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5, leads now into the Giuoco piano of the Italian game. We have now an interesting sideline, a4, trying to expand here on the queen side with also a5, knight to f6, d3, d6, and now a5 immediately. So maybe rare sideline that the Nodirbek is playing here, but it's an expansion. You're trying to play then c3, b4. If, for instance, also it's possible, you can play a6. And here Gukesh plays immediately also a very interesting line with the move bishop to b4. If, of course, you play c3, then you could lose the pawn on a5. This move is pretty much forcing now bishop to d2. Bishop takes d2, and now after knight to d2, the first bishops are off the board. Now, at least we have already trades of minor pieces in the early stage of the game. Castling here by Gukesh, castling also by Nodirbek, and now knight to e7 becomes a theoretical novelty, which is nothing spectacular. I would say many moves you can play. You can play here bishop to d7. I see one game, Jan Nepomniachtchi against Anish Giri. I would say also rook to e8 is, for instance, an opportunity. Rook to b8 with maybe ideas to break and enter with the move b5. So far, I say it's hard to make any mistakes, so Gukesh plays an interesting sideline, of course, with knight to e7, with the idea maybe to reroute the knight on a beautiful square on f4. c3 by Nodirbek, preparing, of course, d4, knight to g6. Now comes this idea, and now rook to e1. You could maybe try a knight to f4 immediately to somehow, I don't know, activate your knight, but this knight so far doesn't have support, so I think then d4 could happen, rook to e8, maybe if it happens, then queen to b3. This battery is, I think, also something that bothers a little bit black in the continuation of the game. Nodirbek played a very interesting sideline, which could prepare this queen and bishop battery. Bishop to e6, for instance, not possible to compete because of her d takes e5. You could lose a pawn, so knight to f4 could be played, but it's a little bit too rushed. Here, Nodirbek is preparing a different, Gukesh is preparing a different idea. He's preparing to reroute his knight here to g5 and trying to activate the queen. Here, maybe attack White's king on the g file. We have now d4 by Nodirbek. Why not? We have now this idea, knight to h7, or now with ideas maybe later to play king to h8, f5, or this idea that we have discussed, knight to g5, and then going with the queen actively here on the g file. Rook to e3. Good move, I would say, here by Nodirbek. Nodirbek senses that Gukesh could come here with the queen on g5, so he would have a new defender in front of his king. Now comes this idea, knight to g5, knight takes, queen to g5, and now g3. Also, rook to g3 was possible, but g3 keeps now also this knight to f4 move a little bit misplaced. You could maybe play knight to f4 immediately, but then h4, the queen could be kicked away. So with queen to g6, knight to f3 could come. So this knight to f4 again, I think, would a little bit be too rushed here for black. After g3, bishop to g4, Gukesh hits now the queen, h4. Great counterplay here by Nodirbek again. The issue is that you cannot play bishop to d1, then after something like h takes g5, you still lose a tempo because you have to retreat with the bishop, and still it is a playable game for black, but the issue is that now you're kept maybe here with the weakness on h6. Also the f7 is a little bit weak, so this is something that Gukesh probably didn't want to risk here. So that's why for h4, Gukesh tried queen to h5. We have now queen to b3, hitting now the pawn on f7 and also the weakness on b7. Rook from a to b8, Gukesh protects it, knight to f1, and now knight to e7. Knight to h2, bishop to d7, and now bishop to e2. I think, again, here Nodirbek found a beautiful way how to push away here black's pieces. Nodirbek has found good defensive plans here. He's kicking now here Gukesh away, and this is still an equal position when it comes to material, but white has better spaces, white has better piece activity. The only piece that's a little bit misplaced is, of course, somehow the knight. The knight doesn't have so far good activity, but in the next couple of moves, of course, Nodirbek is trying to improve it. So we have now d takes e5 here by Nodirbek. Maybe here a slightly better way to proceed is to play queen to c4, hitting now this pawn on c7, where in order to stay in the game, black should find really complicated moves like, I don't know, e takes d4, then c takes d4, and then you go with c5, which I think would be very, very hard to find here for black to somehow equalize the game. Then after something like d takes c5, you go with rook to c8, b4, then you play here d takes c5 again, and then after b5, okay, white has an expansion on the queen side, but now with ideas like a6 or b6, this pawns could be stopped, and black is continuing the game at least here with an interesting pawn on the c file. So this was maybe here an opportunity for Nodirbek to spice up the game somehow. Who knows what Gukesh would have responded here. Very rook to c8 is always dangerous, because then you're weakening here again the f7. So I don't know, maybe queen to c4 slightly better. But d takes e5, still a good position here for Nodirbek. We have now d takes e5, and now Nodirbek finds this plan to attack now the loose bishop on d7. Bishop to e6, we have now queen to b5, knight to c6, and now a6. Good move, again, by Nodirbek. You cannot take, of course, because the knight is hanging. Bishop to c8. Here Gukesh is forced now to bring the bishop into the defense. h5, you see, again, a very nice attacking move by Nodirbek. Nodirbek is keeping now at least here Gukesh busy. He's provoking always a reaction here by black. Again, Gukesh has to step back. Gukesh plays queen to f6, and now rook to f3. Again, a new tempo against the queen. Queen to e6, and now bishop to c4. Again, pushing the queen away. Queen to e7, and I think when it comes to, again, space advantage, when it comes to piece activity, now white has a better position, but still the position should be playable for black. Nothing complicated. White doesn't have so many dangerous attacking motifs, but when it comes to, as I said, simple space and simple activity, this should be a very good position now for white. Queen to a4. Nodirbek steps back from the b file. We have now knight to d8, a takes b7, and now bishop to b7. Here the issues, you cannot play queen to a7. Could be played, but then you're risking this one. Knight to e6 connects now the rooks. You have to now in one moment protect this one. The knight to g5, this pawn is hanging, and now if you try rook to e1, then bishop to c6 opens up now the b file. You have to now step back, and now, okay, black is down a pawn, but suddenly I would say black has a slightly better activity, so Gukesh didn't want to risk anything after Nodirbek didn't want to risk anything after bishop to b7. He didn't pick up the pawn on a7. He played now a solid rook to e3, first of all protecting his e4 pawn. Bishop to c6 now by Gukesh, and now Nodirbek keeps now his active battery against the f7 pawn, and now you see c7 and a7 are still weaknesses in Gukesh's camp, but the issue is you cannot pick up this pawn, because obviously after rook to a8 the queen could be trapped. So that's why queen to a2 here by Nodirbek. Knight to b7. We have now b4, preventing, of course, knight to c5, or here in some lines knight to a5, so the knight is a little bit out of game. Knight to d6. We have now bishop to d5, bishop takes d5, and now rook to d5. Again, an equalish position, but with a little bit messed up pawn structure here by Gukesh. As I said, a7 and c7 are obvious weaknesses in black's camp. We have now queen to e6, rook to e2, c6, and now here Nodirbek goes for the simple weakness. We have now queen takes a2, and now rook takes a2. The issue is you cannot take out now with this one. You would love, of course, to create this battery, but then also this pawn is hanging, so you have to pick it up now with the a pawn. We have now rook from f to c8, knight to g4, and that's the issue about Nodirbek's position. As I mentioned before, the knight was a little bit out of game. The knight was a little bit on the edge of the board. Now Nodirbek is trying to get it somehow back into the game. c5 by Gukesh, good move here to open up now the queen side. If you try, for instance, knight to e5, then it leads into a really, really equalish position. Rook takes b4, you're trying to pick up this one, but then also this one is hanging, and now you could maybe pick up this pawn, but then rook to e8 is very dangerous. If you pick it up with a knight, okay, you are up a pawn, but I think still it's playable. Knight to f6 would solve then all of the problems, and I think in top grandmaster level, Gukesh would find for sure here a drawish solution. But after c5, we have now b takes c5 by Nodirbek, rook to c5, rook takes a7, and now rook to c3, rook to d7, attacking now the knight. If you try, for instance, to defend this knight with your rook on b6, this wouldn't be good because then the pawn is hanging. You're trying to maybe attack it, then look at this, a check could happen, f4, and here white should be much better. So here for rook to d7, knight to e8 by Gukesh, interesting defensive idea. Nodirbek again picks up now the pawn, goes also for the f7 pawn, but now knight to f6 here by Gukesh, hitting first of all the rook. The issue is you cannot really pick up here this pawn with your rook immediately, because then you're running into this line, rook to e8. Then you have to play maybe something like rook to f6. After g takes f6, knight to g4, king to g7. You're trying maybe to attack now the king, but even in this scenario, I would say a drawish position. Now you play rook to c6, protect now this one, and although white is down the exchange, but of course white has some extra pawns. So here rook to f7 is not working, because you simply attack the piece that is protecting now the rook, and then white has to, as I said, give up the rook for knight. So it's not working. So after knight to f6, that's why rook to e7 by Nodirbek, good move. Rook to b4, and now comes, I would say, the first really interesting moment of the game, really important moment of the game. Here Nodirbek finds really a beautiful motif here. He plays now brilliant g4, and g4 is brilliant because it's hard here for black to pick up the pawn on e4, because after rook to e4, knight to e4, actually you're running into an almost checkmate sequence here. You can get checkmated on h8, and the knight is hanging. In order to survive, you have to play strange moves like g6, but now we pick up this one, and suddenly the game is over here for black. After move g4, here Gukesh plays the correct move, rook to c5, attacks again the knight, because rook to f7 is not working. Of course, the knight would be hanging. And now f3, here Nodirbek cements now his pawn structure, and now here Gukesh plays, I think, maybe in his first really important inaccuracy in the game. He plays now the move king to f8. He actually runs into a check, into a very important check. A better choice is to play here rook to b3, because if, for instance, king to g2 happens, then you go with king to f8. It's a different story now. If you, for instance, deliver a check, then you run towards the center, and then in this sequence, after rook to g7, you can pick up this one. If, for instance, rook to g6 happens, then the king can get closer, but then you can try this one, knight to e4. For instance, if f takes e4 happens, then rook to e4. Okay, still white is having some extra pawns, but now at least you can survive this. Maybe a check could happen, but then you play king to f8. For instance, if this one is taken, rook to g4 would happen, and then with just up a pawn, I don't think that white can win this game. But instead of this move, rook to b3, which would be very important to keep white king out of the game, you're simply restricting now white's ability to play active with the king. Gukesh tried king to f8 immediately, and now the game is, when it comes to computer evaluation, almost over here for black, but you have to again find really monstrous ideas to somehow squeeze a win out of this. Nodirbek plays now, first of all, the correct move, rook to f7, which is perfectly fine. He plays now a knight to d3, a very important move. Now comes a check. here by Gukesh. Nodirbek steps back, and now rook to c3, knight to e5. Here we have rook to b5. Even if you try rook to c5, it leads into a complicated line here where you're trying to attack the piece, but now in one moment white will give up simply the knight and then try to deliver it in checkmate. Then you're trying to step back here with the king, but now with king to g6, this is the issue. This rook is holding now the second rank. This knight is hanging, and now maybe again, I don't know, white could be challenged, and this black could maybe sacrifice again the piece here, but it's, I don't think, working here because of her e5 and some lines. Rook to g3, this pawn is protected and this pawn is weak. We just support it with the rook, and this should be, again, I would say, game over here for black. So after knight to e5, we have discussed now this line, rook to c5. In the game, rook to b5 was played by Gukesh, which again is simply not working here because rook takes g7. Great move here by Nodirbek, allows here Gukesh to pick up the piece, but now he plays rook to a2 with a similar plan that we have discussed. Again, king to f8 has to be played, and now again rook to g6. Now again here Gukesh is trying this sacrifice idea. Rook to e2, great move, pinning now the knight to the rook. We have now rook to g5, the only move Gukesh is playing here to keep himself in the game. The issue is now you cannot play rook to e4, then it leads into a drawish line. After rook to g6, h takes g6, you play rook to c6, and now this pawn cannot be protected when we pick up this one with just up a pawn again in this rook endgame. It's not a winning position anymore for Nodirbek. So after here rook to g5, Nodirbek plays now great move, a rook to h6, allows here Gukesh to escape with the knight, and we have reached now this epic endgame in which Nodirbek has now 3 pawns against the knight of Gukesh. But if white plays now the game correctly, I would dare to say this is now completely winning here for Nodirbek. Rook to c6, he pins again the knight to the rook, knight to a4, rook to a6, we have knight to c5, and now a check. Rook to a8, king to f7, rook to a7, a new check, and after king to f6, now comes really the critical moment of the game. Here Gukesh, I would dare to say, has a completely losing position. Nodirbek missed, I think, his chance now. Maybe just for fun, you can pause the video and try to see now the winning idea here for white. Take your time. It's so complicated. I'm not sure how many of us would see this idea, but unfortunately for Nodirbek, he missed it. So just for fun, try to see now here the best solution for white. Okay, here in order to somehow keep a winning chance, again, maybe black could fight, but in order to somehow, as I said, keep yourself active, you have to play h6. The goal here by white is to play king to g3, then going with king to h4, kicking away this rook, and then just push the pawn further. The issue is here for black that you cannot play rook to g6. Then the pawn is marching. Even if you try to go behind, then we pin again here from white's perspective this knight. If you try king to g5 to somehow get out of this potential mess here, then rook to e5 is winning. Then look at this, we pick up simply this one with 2 extra pawns. It's game over. Even if you try, instead of king to g5, I don't know, to play knight to e4 to trade off, I don't know, rooks and go for this pawn, it's again not working because after rook to c3, knight takes c3, rook to c2, then you're trying to do like this, but then rook to c6. The issue is that the king is lined up, you see, on the 6th rank, and now you're trying something like this, and then after rook to h6, it's game over. You obviously cannot pick up the rook because the pawn is going to be promoted. So rook to g6, as we mentioned, is not working because somehow this king is lined up, as we mentioned, on the 6th rank. Even if you try instead of rook to g6 to play maybe rook to g8 to wait for the pawn, then rook to c7, again pinning the knight to the rook. If, for instance, black tries to trade off the pieces, then h7. That was the huge miss here by Nodirbek. Rook to h8, and then you get out. Even if, for instance, black tries to go behind with the rook, then you just play rook to d6, and now this is the goal, g5 and g6. Of course, it's easy for me now to analyze this game when I use an engine. I'm not sure, as I said, how many of us would even consider to calculate this endgame in such depth, but I wanted to just demonstrate that it is possible for white to go for a win here. Rook to c7, then you play f4, and suddenly the pawns are rolling. And now when once the pawn on f5 is coming, when three pieces are suddenly connected on black side of the board, I think this should be unplayable anymore. Here for Gukesh. But what Nodirbek did, instead of h6 here immediately, he tried rook to e8, which in many occasions would be a great move. Usually you should go, of course, active with your rook, but now Gukesh found the only defensive idea here that's possible, a beautiful knight to e6. And this move is great. This move is not allowing any dangerous checks. And also what it is allowing, here's actually Gukesh to include this rook into the game and then to deliver dangerous checks. Here, Nodirbek tries finally h6, but now it's not working. Rook to e5, and suddenly Gukesh has a beautiful rook activity, and he doesn't have to trade off the rooks. The issue is here, after rook to a6 and rook to c2, that here Gukesh played. The issue is that you cannot go with king to g3 here. You can just proceed like this, but then after rook to e2, the issue is, for instance, if you try to push the pawn further, then you get checkmated. You see, with this beautiful knight, black is restricting here white's ability to escape with the king. Now we deliver a check, and then rook to g2 would be an amazing checkmate pattern. So you can maybe sacrifice the rook. The engine, for instance, still gives here equal chances, even with down a whole rook, but it's very too complicated. I didn't want to dive into this one, but look at this. After king to g3 and rook to e2, this would be very hard to handle here for Nodirbek Abdusattorov. So that was the issue. Here Gukesh found, as I said, the beautiful defensive move, knight to e6. He can finally now include both of these rooks on the first rank, on the second rank, and can maybe deliver it, as I said, also maybe even some checkmate. So h6, now it comes this idea, and now after a couple more moves, Nodirbek realized the issue here, that he cannot go to g3 because then the rooks are getting connected on the second rank, and after a couple more moves, the game ended with a thematic draw. So, this was crazy, really an epic game, I would say. This shows how you have to sometimes really calculate like an engine in order to win games in top grandmaster level. Nodirbek had some chances, but I think they were really hard to see. Fair draw. Gukesh found a great defensive idea. Gukesh battled till the end, and still Nodirbek Abdusattorov and Rameshbabu Pragnanda are still in the lead after 6 rounds with 4.5 points, and Gukesh is now on the third place with 4 points. So great game. Nodirbek will probably not be happy with the outcome, but I think this is tough position to play. We'll continue, of course, to follow this beautiful chess tournament, because you see, even the drawish games are really incredible. So, okay, if you want to see some other games that we have covered from this event, here are some games that we have analyzed before. And if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos. And what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.